Welcome back to Real Leverage, guys. Today, Colton and I sat down to talk about two things that come up with almost every single high performer that we interview, which are consistency and discipline. If you feel like you're working hard but you're not seeing the progress, then this episode is for you because we dive into how to fix that by focusing on your inputs instead of just your goals. We also share the specific mindset shifts that help both of us leave the construction industry to build this media business, and that involves the difference between consistent in the things you're already enjoying versus having the true discipline to do the hard stuff that you'd honestly rather avoid. Before we start though, we noticed that 97% of you who watch our podcast on a weekly basis aren't actually subscribed. So please click the subscribe button below. It helps us grow and get on even bigger guests and have more interesting conversations. So please hit the subscribe button and let's get into this conversation. Something I find interesting about myself with consistency is a lot of people find it easier to be consistent in sport or in the gym and then apply that discipline that they've learned from doing that into business or into entrepreneurship. But for me, it's always been the opposite. I find that I have a way easier time being consistent, posting 1 or 2 videos a day on Instagram, and showing up every single day and week over week for my work, being consistent with my 9 months of weekly recaps I'm on, right? I find that way easier than being consistent in the gym. For sports, it's different. I love sports. I play basketball like 3-4 days a week now, and I've always liked sports, but the gym specifically, even though I have a long history of working out, I always find it difficult to be consistent there. And I thought that was interesting reflecting on some of our other guests. Like we were saying a minute ago, Hussam, he was always very disciplined with boxing, and he built consistency up through boxing and applied that directly to raising capital and building relationships and being tenacious there. Carlos was an NCAA track runner, and he had years of consistency, even before that in high school, running track, and he applied that directly to entrepreneurship and showing up every single day and learned those lessons. And as I say this, now maybe I reflect back, all of consistency with me started in grade 8, in grade 9, in grade 10, working out. I worked out like 6 or 7 days a week in high school before I really got excited about entrepreneurship, which came in about grade 10, 11, 12. I started reading books and watching YouTube and stuff. So maybe that early consistency was in the gym for me, and it's now translated, and now entrepreneurship has overtaken my main passion, and so my consistency's switched into entrepreneurship as opposed to working out.
Why do you think it's more difficult to work out than go play basketball?
I don't think it's as fun.
Is that that's just what it comes down to? Okay. Yeah. I mean, you do have a passion for basketball. So, I guess when you're passionate about something, it's easier to get up in the morning, but it's just interesting, right? Because you are an athletic guy. You used to work out 6-7 times in high school. So the fact that it's harder to get up to work out, easier to go to basketball, and easier to go to your desk. I'm the same way.
Probably what it is basketball's like, I said it's more fun, but it's also easier. If I'm playing a competitive game of basketball, maybe I'm out there grinding, right? But getting excited to go hit some heavy squats isn't that fun for me. And again, maybe I just like sports more than working out at this point in my life, but I think it's also inherently easier. And so the consistency and, which builds the discipline required to build that habit is probably harder, just because it is literally physically harder and is mentally harder to go to the gym than it is to go to the park and shoot hoops.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's interesting. I think we have it asked backwards, right? It's easier for us to get up in the morning really early and just get straight to work than it is go to the gym. We are very disciplined in our work, but even today, I work out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but this morning I woke up 30 minutes before my alarm and got straight to work. And that's easier. When it comes to the gym, I'm like, fuck, 5 more minutes and then I'll go. So it's interesting. We got it backwards.
Do you think that that's the case for you because you have significantly more momentum and progress in business and in your work than you do in the gym right now?
I would say it's not more progress. I'd say I'm more unclear of what my goal is to be in the gym. I say I want to be 200 pounds and I want to be shredded. What does that actually look like? Where I'm clear with my goals on the Real Leverage podcast and my personal brand, So there's an easier path and direction to take.
Right.
I think defining your goals makes it easier to stay disciplined. I think we have found that the last couple weeks, even with defining what we want real leverage to be, our personal brands, and the direction we want to go, has made it extremely easy. It's not even a second thought now to do the work. So, yeah,
Why
probably just comes
haven't
down
you
to
why haven't you defined that goal then, if you know that's what you need to do?
hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I think it just comes down to priorities. And that being said, so still go to the gym. I'm less stressed about having the perfect body tomorrow than I am having real leverage, have momentum, and my personal brand, because those are going to pay dividends. Where in a year or two from now, I can go to the gym and spend 2.5 hours there and really hone in on my body. So it's kind of the four burner theory, right? Where you have health, relationships. I think it's something else, and then there's two other ones, but essentially you can only have two burners on it the entire time, and two are going to fail, whether that's relationships, health, business, finance, whatever. So right now my two burners are business and relationships. Health is still up there, but it's not, I don't need a defined goal yet, because I will have the time in a couple of years.
How did you come to decide that those are the two burners that you want to have on and not the other two?
I've always been interested in business. I want to have a successful business and then get my body right. Like, and this is not to say I'm not working out and I'm not eating right. I'm doing that, but I'm less worried about my physique and what it looks like. If I go to the gym 3 times a week and miss a run or two because I'm focusing on work, I'm okay with that, because I know those doing the work is going to compound into greater things in a year or two here, where then I can focus on my running and my training. So I think it just comes down to what is the lowest hanging fruit. And I know that sounds stupid, but I think what we're building with real leverage and personal brands is our lowest hanging fruit right now. So it's like Jay says, go all in on that. Doesn't mean I'm not working out. I have conviction in what I'm doing right now.
That makes sense. And you look at a lot of like really big entrepreneurs, even let's say Alex Hormozy, for example. He has a wife, right? Everybody knows Layla. And I'm sure they're a solid couple, and I think they're very like-minded, so they're well suited for each other. But despite the fact that he has a wife, I wouldn't say that one of his burners are marriage or relationships, right? He's jacked, and he's really successful in business. And I would say his two burners are business and fitness. I bet he works out 6-7 days a week. He's jacked. He's in fantastic shape. And I think he's found a partner who really aligns well. It sounds like anytime I hear about him talk about their relationship on a podcast or something, it sounds like they both just work like dogs. And they say hi at the end of the day, and that works well for them, which is great. But it's interesting that you bring up the four burner theory and you think about him specifically. Two of his burners are definitely business and fitness. And you look at a lot of, okay, here's a contrast to that. They'll look at someone like Dan Martell, and convenient that I was listening to a Dan Martell podcast today. So Dan, if you're listening right now to the Real Leverage podcast, which I really hope you are, we got to get you on. And on the note of the Real Leverage podcast, something Colton and I need to start doing is please subscribe. If you guys are listening right now and you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. I looked at our stats. It's like 97% of people who watch the show are not subscribed, which is absolutely absurd. So make sure you guys subscribe. Back to the note on Dan Martell. He works out every single day. He is a very prominent business figure, entrepreneur, and he has a huge personal brand. And if you ask Dan the most important thing in his life, and I've heard this many times on many podcasts, he would say, I love my wife. That's the thing I'm most proud of. So with that in mind, it seems like Dan has three burners on at the same time. He's in fantastic shape. You could argue it's not fitness. The guy's jacked. He's in his 40s, and he's in fantastic shape. He's one of the most successful entrepreneurs right now with the personal brand, and his wife and kids are the most important thing to him. So what do you have to say about that? He has three burners firing at all times.
Boom. I love it. I think it's different. And why is it different? he's established. He can prioritize better. He has an executive assistant. He, business wise, he can delegate things. You and I are just starting. Therefore, more of our resource and time have to be allocated to only 2 instead of 3 things. When we have an executive assistant in the team, we're not going to be as focused on real, like we're still going to be focused on real leverage, but we don't have to put 12 hours into it a day, and our personal brand as well. So he definitely, when he first started out, did not have all 3 burners running. But since he's built such amazing systems, now he can have 3, even 4. And look at a guy like Elon Musk. He runs 5 companies. I think he also has 5 kids.
Yeah.
Don't know if he has a wife. He's always getting divorced, so I would say he has 3 of the 4 burners, and it's definitely not relationships. But again, he's built systems and has people in place, so he doesn't have to be on one business at all times. So that's what I would say. But for me, what would you say your 2 burners are right now? Or do you think you have 3?
No, definitely not. My fitness always suffers every week. Like I said, do my weekly recap, and almost every single week, the thing that needs to be improved on for the following week is health or fitness, whichever I just decide to label it as that day. And that's been the case for almost 9 months. I would say 75% of the time, that's probably the core thing. And the other 25% was the 2 months I took off from doing content. And so for my 4 burners, for sure, 2 of them are unlit, I would say business and relationships. And I'm quite selective with my relationships and who I spend time with, even people that I've been historically close with. I'm quite selective, but I would say, my close circle, my family, if they need me. And obviously Kaylee gets a lot of my spare time. But I think something worth noting too is like, just because you have 2 out of 4 burners lit doesn't mean that the 2 are necessarily equal. And what I mean by that is, I probably work on average like 10, 11 hours a day. I try to work every day from 6:30 until 5:30, Monday to Friday. And then every weekend I try to work at least 8 hours. Some days, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I only work 4 hours on Sunday, 7, 8 hours on Saturday. But that goes to say that, like, yeah, maybe in this build phase of our lives and for entrepreneurs thinking about consistency and discipline, you have to prioritize a couple things to be really great at them and build something. But sometimes one of them will supersede the other. And another example would be if you are 2 burners, which are probably the case for a lot of entrepreneurs that we know in our sort of circle, the young guys. They're very diligent with their fitness. They're in great shape, and they're building their businesses and personal brands and stuff. And I would say relationships isn't one of them. But to the point of one superseding the other, they probably work 12 hours a day, but only work out an hour and a half a day. So it's not necessarily equal in that sense. And another example of the burner theory, which I did not think we were going to spend this much time on in this podcast, I'm thinking about Ryan Serrant, another dream guest of ours on the podcast, which I think I said on like our 3rd podcast dating back now. We asked each other, I just remembered what our dream guests are. And I think you said Alex Hormozy or Patrick Bet-David, and I think I said Ryan Serrant. And yeah. Ryan, well exposed now through 2 seasons of Owning Manhattan on Netflix. One of his 2 burners is definitely not relationships, and he has a wife and a kid. And that's like a repeat problem in the show, and I know it's meant to be dramatic. But after watching Ryan for so many years, like, he's all business. He works out at 4:30 in the morning. He says, if you start the day with the hardest thing, everything else is easier. Working out at 4:30 in the morning, 6 days a week, is way harder than negotiating $10 million deals. Believe it or not, guys, whoever's listening to that and might disagree, I'll argue that, especially when you get in his position. And so it is interesting to sort of digest that. But I think, to kind of round the point out, in our position right now, we do really only have space for like 2 solid burners, and kind of you trickle in a 3rd, and I try to go to the gym, and I do like to play basketball at night. But building up that consistency, the best time would be to do it in the morning, but that sucks and it's hard. And the first thing I do when I wake up is want to get to work. What do I need to knock off my to-do list to make this a productive day? I have a lot going on. And so by the end of the day, I don't want to go work out. I'll go play basketball because it's easy, like I said, or I'll go hang out with Kaylee or do something, make dinner, right? Usually I like wind down for the night at like 7:30 now, or 8 sometimes. So it's a long day. But that's a good point to bring up, the sort of four-burning theory.
I got another point, which maybe our audience will agree or disagree with, and I want your take on this. I don't think we're disciplined. And why do I say that? Alex Hormozi talks about discipline as doing something that you don't like to do and doing it every day, even when you don't want to. We love to work. We love to grind. That's why I don't think it's disciplined. We just do it because we love it. It doesn't feel like work and we want to do it. We're at the gym. We try as much as possible, but we don't always do it. So I would say we're consistent, but not disciplined yet, because we like grinding out the Real Leverage podcast and the personal brand and doing sales for our jobs. We like doing those things. So it's not, we don't wake up and resent what we have to do that day. Therefore, I don't think we have true discipline.
That's an interesting take from Hormozi, and I'd love to hear him say the direct quote.
Mm-hmm.
He says, do something you don't like every day. Why is that the case? What does he do every day that he doesn't like? He loves to work. He loves fitness. And I think that's all he does. And I agree, forcing yourself to do hard things to grow is important. And maybe more context around that quote is important. Because what does that really mean? Probably it means that, every day I have sales calls. And it's not that I don't like them, because I do once I'm in them, but it's terrifying. I get anxiety before them, with this new role. And we have big guests on, and that can be scary. So there is hard things to do. And maybe you have more context on that quote you'd like to add.
Yeah, so it was on the Impulsive podcast, and the context was Alex Hormozi was trying to break the definition of discipline, because Logan Paul said you have to be extremely disciplined. And Alex Hormozi's point was personal trainers say they're extremely disciplined, but that's because they love going to the gym. They love doing that shit. That shit's not hard. That's part of their routine. Doing something disciplined is something you don't like doing or you're going to resent, and still doing it anyways. And that's why I related it to Real Leverage and personal brand. Is every single day we get fired up to shoot a podcast, to film our videos, to edit them and post them. We are consistent, but I wouldn't call it discipline, because we're not resenting doing those actions. We love to do it.
And is that your true definition of disciplined, doing something that you don't want to do?
I think it's a part of the definition for sure. I think someone who is truly disciplined does the hardship when they don't want to, but it also can be a love for the game. I think it goes hand in hand. I just found it an interesting take and was curious what you thought, because we're almost disciplined in the gym. We're getting there. But I wouldn't say we're disciplined in work because we love it.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, and it's something I didn't think about necessarily. Because if somebody asked me, I would argue, tell them blue in the face, that I'm an extremely disciplined individual. And maybe this ties back to what we talked about this weekend. Me and Colton and another friend had a very, very deep discussion about, interpersonal psychology and relationships and stuff. And we're not going to air all that out here. We'll keep that for our personal therapists. But something that I'm willing to share, and I said to them, and we had a deep conversation on this specifically, is a lot of things come really easy to me. Naturally, I'm pretty good at, academics, sports, and I don't need to go down the rabbit hole of that, but things do come easy to me. So that poses a good question. Am I truly disciplined because things do come really easy to me? I'm consistent every single day. I record 1 or 2 Instagram videos for my various channels and platforms and deals, and I do my work every day for my job, and I show up to my sales meetings. I'm extremely consistent, but by nature, the improvement of those things is quite easy, and I already started from a good place. So am I truly disciplined because it's not inherently hard for me? That poses a really good point that I hadn't really considered with that perspective before.
Yeah, and it ties it back to all the guests we've been interviewing recently here, and they are disciplined for sure, because I know a couple of them have had to do really hard shit that they don't want to do, therefore making them disciplined. I think we're on the journey of becoming disciplined, but we're extremely consistent right now. I think the most disciplined we've ever been before Real Leverage and our personal brand was with running. Remember when it was pouring out and we were still going on runs, or when we
Yeah.
were hurt and we were still going on runs, or even the night before the half marathon and we were still up in the morning to go on the run with 2 hours of sleep? Like,
Yeah.
that's discipline. We didn't want to, but we still did it, even though our mind and the voice in our head kept saying, let's not do this, let's not do this, let's not do this.
Maybe the correct frame to think about it is you need discipline to build consistency. And I thought maybe if you're consistent, you're disciplined, which could also be true both ways. But I think maybe thinking of that in that frame of mind, you need to be disciplined to build consistency. And my example is there was a time, you could argue in the beginning, we were disciplined to do the podcast. We wanted to. It was fun. It was new, but it was scary. We didn't know exactly how it was going to go, what we were going to get out of it, why we were doing it, right? The vision's changed so much. So you could say we're very disciplined in the beginning, growing the podcast. Through that discipline, it's built consistency in our routine. And now every single week we show up to do it because it's fun, it's routine, but it's not inherently difficult. And even with my personal content, in the beginning, same thing. I didn't have a clear path with it. I made videos on 7 different topics, all personal to me, but broad by nature to an audience. And through the discipline of doing that over time, I built consistency, seen the results of it, and now it's routine. I think that's a sort of key takeaway. So I'm curious, in your view, how does someone build that consistency? In your view, how does someone build that discipline to therefore build consistency with time?
I think it's multi-layered. If you're starting out and you haven't actually applied yourself to anything or stayed consistent to, let's say, a job or even content, I think the first step is you need to have your goal and then break it down into weekly steps. That's kind of what I did for content. In the sense of, let's say, content Colton 1.0 with Real Leverage 1 and 2.0, wasn't always posting every single day and wasn't consistently posting, didn't know the direction. Where now with this 2.0, whatever you want to call it, and the direction we're going is I set a year goal from where I want my content to be, and then reverse engineer the goal to a week by week basis and what I need to do to achieve that. Therefore, every week is just a to-do list and checking it off. Example being, every day I need to post 3 videos, 2 of me sitting at that table out in the kitchen, giving some advice, and 1 showing me building in public with communication or building our media business. That has, over the last 2 weeks, started to build discipline and consistency because I've been posting 3 times a day and will compound over time. So I think someone who wants to build discipline needs to first define what goal they're trying to achieve and then reverse engineer it back, make a list of some sort, a weekly list, and then go from there. And then eventually you build the discipline, the habit, and then it becomes consistent.
I think the key takeaway with that is making things as easy as possible, which is what I just wrote down, right? Colton set a goal and he reverse engineered what he needs to do. And something me and Colton have specifically discussed a lot lately is it's great to set big goals like growing 10,000 followers or making $100,000 in income for the first time. But the more important thing is to focus on the input required to see that output. If your goal is to grow 10,000 followers, your real goal should be to post 100 videos, right? Focusing on the input and you'll receive the output with time. And it might not be so linear like that. It might take more work, more reflection, more time than you thought. But if you focus on the input, you get the output. But back to my point on making things as easy as possible, a good book, which could just be the takeaway of this episode, is Atomic Habits, right? Talking about building habits, building discipline, and building consistency. And a key point in that book, which I always remember, and I haven't read it for probably 5 years, is making things as easy as possible. If you want to build a habit for reading 15 pages every night, something easy, but something that most people fail to do consistently, put the book on your pillow. When you get up in the morning, make your bed at 8 in the morning or 7 in the morning, I don't care what time you wake up, and you put your book on your pillow. And 12 hours later, 13, 14 hours later, when you get back into bed, that book's sitting there waiting for you. And it's something small. But not only is that an example from the book, that's exactly what I did. I put my book on my pillow, and I did that for almost a year straight, and I read every single night. Or this is another more extreme example, but if you play video games, I used to play video games like crazy. And if you have an addiction to playing video games and you truly want to stop it and do something different with your life, pack your Xbox up when you're done playing it and put it in your closet. And next time you want to play it, you're going to have to open your closet, set that shit back up, plug it into the TV in the wall, and like that's a pain in the ass. And you will probably start doing it less. It goes both ways. Set yourself up for success by putting the thing in front of you where you're going to be, and do the opposite by putting the bad habit away. Tuck it away, throw it in the closet. Delete that app on your phone every time you're done scrolling TikTok for 4 hours before bed. Delete it. So tomorrow morning, you either have to download it or just not go on it. And our brains are wired to do the easy thing. And the easy thing at 6 a.m. is just to like not go on TikTok and just like brush your teeth instead. And that will kind of compound with time. So that's definitely a book that people should read if they haven't, if they're focused on building something big in 2026.
I like it. And I think it's another core theme of even this episode is identity. First off, every entrepreneur we have interviewed so far identifies themselves as a disciplined person, therefore they are. Identity is one of the hardest things to break if you're not conscious of it. So being conscious of what you're trying to do is, I think, the most important thing you can do, but also just building the habits. I think a lot of people, we're guilty of this, have set the goals but not built the daily habits or inputs. Once again, relating to every entrepreneur we have talked to, did the hard thing every single day, built the habits, and now they're absolute dogs, and we talk about that. But it's just normal to them because they built it over time.
Yeah, I think specifically the identity input that you just mentioned is something that people should take away. And it's hard just to do hard stuff. Like everyone's great advice is like just start. And that's the advice I've given people, and that's the advice I've been given. But like that's obvious. But I think thinking about yourself as the person you want to be is a really easy way to sort of smooth that transition over. It's really hard to start a business and start cold calling. But if you wake up in the morning and you do the easy thing, which is going in front of the mirror and looking yourself in the eyes and saying, I'm an entrepreneur who cold calls today. It sounds silly, but if you do that for 10 days, on the 11th day, you're just going to get up and cold call, and it'll be less scary. And even if that's the first day that you do it, it will be easier because you've identified yourself as that individual. And that's definitely something that I've sort of taken away from our guests as well, is they built a lot of skills up before transitioning into the thing that they wanted to do, but they all identified as that person that they wanted to transition into, right? Like Hussam, he wanted to raise capital and build relationships and stuff, and he, did the hard things, he did the networking and all that, but he saw himself as that person, and now he's getting into those rooms and those conversations. So I think that's a key takeaway, is identifying yourself as the person you want to be. And I know Chase Hughes talks about that a little bit as well. I don't know if you have any comments on him or that point, Colton.
Yeah, I'll bring that up for sure. I just want to tie it back to something quickly, and it's the most consistent quote in personal development, and definition, which is the person you are today versus the person you are capable of becoming. And that is all personal development is. And it's where are we today and who are we capable of becoming and know we can become. Back to the identity thing, something that's helped me and could be a great takeaway for our guest is writing down on a piece of paper every single morning. It sounds stupid, it sounds redundant, but it does work. I am the type of person that does XYZ. So for example, I am the type of person who goes to the gym at 6 a.m. in the morning. I am the type of person who goes to the gym at 6 a.m. in the morning. Do that 10 times every single morning for 3 months, and you will change your identity. And this is something that Chase Hughes says, and he's a major, I want to say, player or expert in behavioral science and psychology. And you're shifting your identity. Another example he gives is humans want to be as comfortable as possible. They run away from discomfort. So if you're trying to lose weight, you can be skinny as me, or if you want to gain muscle or whatever, go on ChatGPT and make a picture of you being fat and put it on your fridge. And subconsciously, you're going to make yourself go to the gym because you are uncomfortable with that picture and want to do better. Humans run away from discomfort. So these are all small psychological tricks that can, one, change your identity and build new habits for you that Chase Hughes talks about.
Yeah, that's a great point. I remember we were talking about that the other day. You said putting a picture of yourself fat on the fridge. And it's funny what that will do to a person. They'll actually not want to go to the fridge and eat the food because they don't like looking at themselves like that. But that's a really easy thing. That's way easier than going to the gym 5 days a week for 6 months without any habit of going to the gym. It's way easier just to use Nano Banana and Gemini and make a fat photo of yourself. That's easy. Anyone can do that. But the benefit of doing that, you start to identify as the person who does go to the gym because you don't want to be that person. So that's a good point.
But it comes down to everyone can relate to this. Even for us in networking, when we're like, hey, you should go talk to that person. It's like, oh, I'm not comfortable doing that. I'm not the type of person who's doing that. You are subconsciously telling yourself that that is your identity, that you are not someone who goes up to it. Our brains are computers. They are reprogrammable. You just have to be saying the right things and writing down the right things and thinking the right things.
Do you have one example of a time where you did that in reality? You gave yourself that identity of the person you wanted to be, and therefore you did something hard and you saw the benefits of it?
Yeah, I think the number one example for me, which is an extreme example, but I was trying to get out of construction in 2025, and I went to Vierick 2025, which is now who we work for. I kept saying to myself, I am someone who works in this industry. I am someone who wants to do big things. It was very vague, but I didn't know which direction I wanted to go. And I said, I want to meet a specific individual named David Hodge to see if there was an opportunity there. And that's all I was saying all weekend is I want to meet David Hodge. I'm going to try to get a meeting with David Hodge. Long story short, turns out he wasn't at the conference and he was at his office. I've been repeating to myself all weekend that I'm the type of person who's going to go meet Dave Hodge and get a job, and I'm the type of person who wants to get out of construction. So I asked someone on the floor for directions to his office, put it on Google Maps, and went all the way to his office, went up 14 floors, went to his secretary asking to speak to Dave Hodge, and said I had a meeting. And so I actually said I have a meeting with Dave Hodge. I'm here to shake his hand. And he wasn't there. He was actually at the conference. So I ran back down to go meet him. He snuck me into a private part of the conference, and we had a 2-hour discussion. And next week, Tyler, when we went to Vancouver, I went back to his office for a potential job. And it's all because I identified that I'm the type of person that's going to go do this, and I have to meet this person to change my future. Therefore, it became an obligation.
That's very, very powerful stuff. And I'm going to share my own example of a time where I've done this, and it's really allowed me to get out of construction having this mindset. So my whole time doing construction, if you're a new viewer, I did construction, carpentry for 5.5 years before transitioning into my new job, this new industry, starting a podcast and social media and such. And the entire time I was doing construction, nearly every day, I thought, this is not what I want to do. I can do more with my life. And that's not to say that if you want to be in construction, you could own $1 billion company, right? But I didn't want to do that in construction. I didn't like the industry, and I wanted more out of life and in business and stuff. And so I never accepted that that was all it was going to be for me. And I think that's directly contributed to my ability to eventually, after a long time, longer than it should have been, removing myself from that industry, getting a new job in an entirely foreign industry, and getting all these opportunities that I've gotten now. My life's changed drastically, especially in the last few months, but even over the last 7 or 8 months from getting out of construction. And I think the key theme with that is I identified almost on a daily basis that that's not who I was. I was an outsider in the construction industry. As a lead hand managing 25 people, I was an outsider. I didn't belong there. That's not who I was. I was a business guy. And to reference, some coworkers, not to name anybody, or people that I've met, they didn't feel like outsiders, and they accepted that that's as good as life got. And so they didn't hate it as much as me. And I think that's a core point, I hated being in construction. No disrespect to anybody I worked with or worked for or met. I hated it. And that's because I didn't accept that that's as good as life got for me. And I knew something else was out there that I needed to go find. But for the people who accepted it, it wasn't as bad for them. So if you're feeling like a bit of an outsider, or you feel like you want to change careers, even if you don't know exactly how to frame that mindset, just like hate it. And your day will be shittier. You might go months. I went years miserable in construction because I hated it so much. And that's exactly why I was able to get out of it and find, a good amount of success very early on. It's been less than a year. It's only been 10 months since I quit construction, and my life has changed drastically. And I think that's all comes back to hating that and identifying myself as someone else.
And what was it? It was discomfort that got you out.
Yeah.
But back to stage one of human behavior and psychology. It was discomfort. And I think if anyone is feeling resentment towards their job, or this is not who I am, or I hate this, I'm happy for you, because you're on the right direction to changing your life. That is a perfect place to be. So
100%, and double down on that. Like, I probably came home every day and phoned Colton or phoned my girlfriend or my other friend Jared or whoever, and was like, I fucking hate this job. I hate this industry. I hated it, right? And that fueled me to want to get out. And I think you'll realize quickly, first of all, opportunity is endless in the world. If that's anything that I've learned in the last 8 months, is opportunities everywhere, and you can do whatever you want. And throw some feelers out there. If you're, and I don't care what industry you're in, if you are doing something you don't like and you hate it, find that industry that you do want to get into, you do think is interesting, shoot some random people some messages, right? They're willing to talk to you. Everybody is willing to help people. And you'll realize very quickly that you can make a transition very, very easily if you're willing to put in the work and get uncomfortable, like Colton said.
100%. And I think, again, it comes back to people can only put up with so much pain for so long. And it might sound negative to say, I hate my job, I hate this, I hate that. But the whole reason I got into construction is because I put an identity with myself that I couldn't go into business and stuff because I sucked at school and didn't care. Therefore, I went to construction and I just accepted construction, and that was my thought process. It changed quite fast, but again, you can relate it to your identity. If you get into a conflict or say, oh, why do I always get these bad boyfriends? Look in the mirror, honey, because it's not the boyfriends. You're identifying yourself with that type of person that you want to date. It's a slap in the face, but it's the truth. We're accountable for everything in this life, every mistake. And if you can't look yourself in the mirror and see, why is this happening, especially if it's a reoccurring thing, then, I've just done that recently again. And it is a punch to the ego. It fucks up your ego. But it's necessary to improve and develop. So I guess we've talked a lot, Tyler, about advice in our stories, about consistency, discipline, mindset. What is another little advice you could give our guests before we go here? I know we're getting pretty close to the bell.
Yeah, I would say don't accept where you're at. Know that it can get better, and it can get a lot better. And take the path of least resistance to that better life. That doesn't mean settle where you're at. That means if you want to change careers, take the easy first step. Ask somebody you know what it's like to work in that industry. If you don't know anybody, send a message to one nice looking person on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or wherever you are. Take the easy first step, but don't accept where you're at, and know that it gets a lot better with a little bit of discomfort.
That's an amazing way to end the podcast. And everyone, I don't know when this podcast is coming out, probably tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
We have a massive guest coming on, and that podcast will be released Monday. He's worked with Logan Paul, Mike Maynard, Jake Paul, George Janko, and Bryce Crawford. This is going to be a massive episode, so you guys need to tune in, and you need to hit the subscribe button. Like Tyler said, 97% of you are not subscribed. Come on. It's free. Support us. We're bringing on some bigger guests in the next couple weeks here. So if you want to help us out, just hit that subscribe button.